first home buyer almost gave up before the bank even said no. His problem? His credit score. In this video, I'm going to walk you through options that you may have if you have a not so good credit score. I met with a client recently who had a not so good credit report and he knew it. He had a problem and he needed a solution. He was single, he had a full-time job, no dependents, good amount of savings. More or less, he was ready to buy a house right now. But unfortunately, after 12 long months of unfortunate events, his credit score was left incredibly damaged. And because of this, he was very discouraged to even consider purchasing his first home. And once I had a very good look at his situation, he was right. He wasn't in the best position. Firstly, a credit report is a document that outlines all of your existing debts and previous debts, along with your repayment conduct across all of those accounts. It looks at your repayment history, essentially. And lenders use your credit report to determine how much of a risk you will be to the bank. The very first thing we need to sit down and assess is how badly has your credit score been affected, because there is a huge difference between someone who has missed a repayment 8 months ago compared to somebody who has just freshly defaulted. The lender needs a good understanding of what happened, when it happened, is this a pattern of missed repayments or a one-off, and has it been fixed? These things will immediately help mitigate your application before we send it to a lender, so we can establish how risky it's going to be and to establish if your scenario fits within lender policies. For context, a good credit score, one that you shouldn't receive any pushback from a lender for, is anywhere between 600 or 700 plus. Anything below 500 though, the lenders are definitely going to ask questions. When lenders looked at my client's application, the credit score was not the only thing that they consider. And again, depending on the severity of the damage done to your report, will 100% determine what we can offer you. In my client's case, we were working with a credit score of 490, which isn't great, but it's also not the end of the world. In this case, we were very lucky to workshop this scenario with a lender who was willing to take on this scenario because we had really good mitigating explanations as to why his report was like, why it was like what it was. But in other scenarios, we may need to consider something called a non-conforming lender. So for example, in my client's case, he had a car loan that had been open for 5+ years. However, the lender had declared some missed repayments on his account, which was not the case. So that was a lender error. There was also a missed repayment on one of his credit cards. That was easily mitigated because it was a missed repayment from more than 12 months ago. He made the repayment and both of the accounts are up to date and have been for the last 6 months. But in other scenarios, we may need to consider something called a non-conforming lender. An example of needing to take you to a non-conforming lender would involve you missing several consecutive repayments on any loan, whether it be home loan, personal loan, credit card, or if you have declared bankruptcy, because yes, there are lenders that do consider bankrupts. Now, a non-conforming lender is a specialized lender that takes into consideration more than just your credit report and looks at the overall picture of what you're trying to do. They conduct their full assessment based on your supporting documents, opposed to issuing an immediate decline. Now, non-conforming lenders are great alternative options, but they do come at a much higher cost because they will definitely charge you a high variable rate and higher application fees, but it could be better than still renting. If you aren't keen on the option of a non-conforming lender, then the other alternative option is we simply ride out the low score until it improves. Now, deciding to improve your credit score is great. However, it will take months of monitoring and patience because unfortunately, it doesn't magically fix itself. You will notice gradual improvements to your report over 3 to 6 months. However, huge blemishes on your report, such as bankruptcies and defaults, will take a lot longer to clear from the report. But waiting it out puts you in a much better financial position, opposed to if you were to apply now with a non-conforming lender. This is because with a better credit score, the banks will treat you better, much better. It'll open up the gates for a lot more options in terms of lenders, because their policies are a lot more flexible because you have a better credit score. You're less of a risk. People assume that they can't apply for a home loan because they have a bad credit score, which again, is not always the case. Sometimes it means fewer options. Sometimes it means waiting a lot longer. So, could my client have bought right now? And the answer is yes, he absolutely could have. Not necessarily with every lender, not necessarily immediately, but there were still absolutely options available. Now, after a lot of thinking, he did actually decide that he was going to sit on it for 6 months, wait until his credit improved, but we did so with a good plan moving forward. And in 6 months' time, he bought and moved into his first house. Oh, and guess what? He had absolutely no problems. It sailed through, and he was happy, and I was happy. Everyone was happy. This situation was nowhere near as hopeless as he thought it was going to be. In the grand scheme of things, he had to wait 6 to 8 months, but he got what he wanted in the end. If this sounds like you, the first thing you want to do is stop focusing on only the score. Look at the reason behind it. Look at your continuous repayment history. Avoid missing future repayments. Continue to grow your savings. And please get advice before you assume the answer is no. All of these things will help you. In my time of being a broker, I've seen people with excellent credit scores get declined, and I've seen people with moderate to poor credit scores become homeowners. If you're sitting there thinking that you've completely written off all of your chances in applying for a loan, don't write yourself off just yet. And let's look at the full picture first. If you found this video helpful, please make sure to like, subscribe, share with a friend, and book a free strategy session. Link is down below. Bye!